नमस्कार, मैं एलपी हूँ और जनचौक डायलॉग्स में आपका स्वागत है। अडानी ग्रुप भारत में गलत वजहों से चर्चा में है, लेकिन एक और देश है जहां अडानी ग्रुप को बहुत विरोध झेलना पड़ा। हम ऑस्ट्रेलिया की बात कर रहे हैं, जहां कुछ ग्रुप्स कई सालों से अडानी समूह की मुखालफत कर रहे हैं। ये पूरा मामला क्वींसलैंड की कारमाइकल माइन से जुड़ा है। 2010 में अडानी ग्रुप ने प्रोजेक्ट हाथ में लिया। उस वक्त ग्रुप इसे 6 करोड़ टन सालाना क्षमता का प्रोजेक्ट बनाना चाहता था, लेकिन इस प्रोजेक्ट का बहुत विरोध हुआ। पर्यावरण के लिए काम कर रहे कई संगठनों ने ग्रुप के खिलाफ लंबी लड़ाई लड़ी, जिसका असर भी हुआ। 2018 में इस प्रोजेक्ट को हरी झंडी तो मिली, लेकिन सीमित क्षमता के साथ। ऐसी एक एनजीओ है बॉब ब्राउन फाउंडेशन, जो कुछ सालों से अडानी वॉच प्रोजेक्ट चला रही है। इस प्रोजेक्ट के कोऑर्डिनेटर और एडिटर जेफ लॉ हमारे साथ हैं। आइए उनसे बात करते हैं। What does Adani Watch campaign do? When and why it came into existence?
Adani Watch was started by the Bob Brown Foundation, an Australian environment group, in 2019 as part of the campaign to stop the massive coal mine that the Adani Group was attempting to establish here in Australia. And we decided that it was important to raise international awareness and awareness in Australia of the other misdeeds that the Adani Group carries out. In particular, the massive effect of coal mines and coal power stations on Indigenous groups and fishing communities and other people in India, where the environment is trashed by these massive operations, which are also contributing to climate change. And these were scandals that needed to be brought to the public attention.
All right. So can you tell me more about what were the ecological and environmental concerns caused by Adani Group in Carmichael mines in Queensland?
Well, for a start, the original proposal was to build a coal mine that would be extracting more than 50 million tonnes per annum. Eventually, that was carved back as a response to the campaigning. But 10 million tonnes per annum is a massive amount of carbon dioxide and associated methane to put into the atmosphere at a time when the Earth is facing a climate crisis. And on top of that, it was the impacts on endangered species in the vicinity of the mine, impacts on water, impacts on the Indigenous people and their culture. And these are impacts which are being carried out on a daily basis in India as well, and where the Adani Group has massive coal mines and a whole agenda of proposed new coal mines. The Adani Group already operates 2 huge coal mines in India in the vicinity of the Hasdev forests, and it has additional coal mines which are on the drawing board. And there are numerous coal blocks which are subject to these plans by the Adani Group. And the impacts on the local people are going to be diabolical. They will be displaced from their ancestral lands, and they will have forests that they have been greatly familiar, intimate with for many generations, completely destroyed, and their lifestyles and livelihoods, their traditional ways of life will be obliterated. These are some of the most vulnerable people in India, and it's very difficult for them to stand up to a juggernaut such as that of the Adani Group. And so this is one of the missions of Adani Watch, is to give a voice to people in that situation.
Yeah, as you mentioned, and I was just reading one of your articles where in your writings you talk about 14 epicenters of conflicts that have arisen from Adani Group's exploitation of coal. You just mentioned. Please tell us more about this.
Well, there are the coal mines themselves and proposals in the Hasdev forests, which is the homeland of the Gond people. Then there are other coal mines in places such as Talabira in Odisha, and a place called Gondalpura in Jharkhand. And the impacts of these are going to be very severe for the local people, with whole villages obliterated, with water supplies sullied, with forests destroyed, and with livelihoods ruined. And the people concerned will have no option but to move to the periphery of cities and try to seek day labour there. And so then there's the loss of identity and way of life as well. The other areas where the Adani Group is having a huge impact with the expansion plans for coal-fired power stations. Now, this is in the Udupi area in Karnataka, but there are also plans for new coal-fired power stations in Madhya Pradesh, for example, the Pench power scheme, which has already resulted in the displacement of Indigenous farmers who are fighting back. And that's the inspiring thing. The work that I do for Adani Watch brings me into contact with journalists and with people from the community who are taking a very brave stand against a very, very powerful set of corporations in India at a time when freedom of the press is being eroded and when general democratic freedoms are also being eroded. But these people are standing up for what they believe in, standing up for their local environment, standing up for their communities, and standing up for their ancestral lands. And those stories, as well as having disturbing elements, they can also be very inspiring.
Exactly. So you mentioned Hasdev forest right now. And I was reading somewhere, and I'll quote you. You said, I would want the Indian government and Adani Group to realize the importance of Hasdev forest, and I would urge them to withdraw from the area. Why did you say that?
Well, these are some of the most biodiverse areas in India. The forests themselves are home to a whole galaxy of different species, you know, from fish species and different types of tree to mammals, including elephants. And it's also been the ancestral land for Adivasi people for countless generations. The Gond people who have been the custodians of those forests and who have relied on the forests for food, for firewood, for medicines, for various other products, but also for their culture, for their very identity. And to have those forests obliterated by these giant excavations is simply devastating to the psyche of entire communities. And so that, combined with the extraordinary natural values of the area, are a reason for these places to be a no-go zone for coal mining. Indeed, the Environment Ministry declared the areas to be a no-go zone back in about 2011. But those judgments have been thrown by the wayside in favour of untramelled exploitation of coal. And as well as the proposed mines in the Hasdev region, there are the other ones that I've been talking about. The Hasdev forests are in Chhattisgarh, but there's also the proposals for new mines in Madhya Pradesh, in Odisha, in Jharkhand as well. You add that to the huge agenda for coal-fired power stations, and this is just a huge burden on the Earth's atmosphere and therefore the climate. So therefore it's a matter of concern for people right round the planet, but particularly for those who are there witnessing their own homelands being irrevocably destroyed by this juggernaut.
Okay, so you must be aware of the uproar Hindenburg Report has created in India. What is your reaction to it?
Well, the Adani group has been under criticism for quite some time for being overly highly leveraged, for having a debt-driven expansion strategy where the group has been acquiring one business after another almost on a weekly basis, whether it's a media outlet such as NDTV, or whether it's cement, or whether it's greater operations in the defence industries, or whether it's expansion of their edible oils businesses and so on. It's happening right across a huge range of business activities in India, and allied to that, and therefore impeding scrutiny of the conglomerate's operations, is this network of fairly shadowy companies, investors in various Adani companies, which are located in tax havens such as Mauritius, Cyprus, British Virgin Islands, etc. And that's what the Hindenburg research focused on, the fact that that these operations, these entities offshore, can be used to manipulate stock prices. So that's the centre of the Hindenburg allegations, basically that there's a lot more to the Adani Group than meets the eye for the shareholders and stock markets concerned. Now, Adani Watch brought to light some of this material back in July 2021, when a very intrepid freelance journalist, Ravi Nair, took a pretty deep dive into these networks of entities offshore that are heavily invested in the Adani Group, and which technically are supposed to be independent of the Adani Group. And he came up with some very, very pertinent questions about those groups. So I think it is a vindication of the work done by journalists such as Ravi Nair, and also the work of Adani Watch. But that in turn has led to problems for these journalists, who some of whom are facing lawsuits from Adani companies.
Yes. So in one of your articles, you mentioned that if there is enough pressure put on the group, they withdraw. Is that true? Is that what you think?
I think we have to take courage from the courage of the people in places such as the Hasdev forests, or the people in Kerala, the fishing villages there who are standing up to the Adani Group's massive port development and the impacts that will have on the marine environment and on the coastal zone. We have to take heart from the people around the Udupi power station and the people who are looking down the barrel of a massive coal-fired power station near Chhindwara in Madhya Pradesh. They've stood up to this massive conglomeration of businesses run by Mr. Adani. And despite being vulnerable people, and despite having faced all sorts of persecution, they have persisted. And so I think it's up to all the rest of us, whether we live in India or in Australia like I do, to take heart from other people's courage and to do what we can to bring this huge corporation to account. You know, it is these environments and livelihoods of people that are at stake, but also the Earth's climate, because the Adani Group is one of the world's biggest developers of new coal mines and other new projects on the face of the planet. And that's happening at a time when we're desperately trying to rein in global heating. Now, if all of those coal projects proceed in India, there is not a hope in hell of constraining climate change, global warming, to 1.5 degrees Celsius. It's not going to happen. We're going to be in danger of runaway climate change, if indeed we're not experiencing that right now. So it's a matter of global concern. It's a matter for all investors around the planet and all citizens around the planet to scrutinise these activities of the Adani Group when it comes to these coal expansions, and to put our point of view accordingly.
Yeah, coming back to Australian context, are you happy with whatever environment activists have achieved? I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat this. Are you happy with whatever environment activists have achieved in Australia against the group?
Well, it's been an amazing grassroots movement, the Stop Adani movement. which has generated headlines across Australia and has resulted in many contractors and many dozens of finance companies deciding that they will not support the Adani Group's Carmichael mine. Nevertheless, the mine has proceeded and there is coal being exported. So that's a significant blow. But I believe it will be a Pyrrhic victory for the Adani Group because of the sheer cost of that operation. But more importantly, the damage to the Adani brand. I mean, here in Australia, the Adani mine had to change its name from Adani to Bravus because the name Adani had become so toxic in Australia. Now, what with the Hindenburg revelations and international growing concern about coal mining operations in India, it's very likely that the Adani brand will suffer similar damage, not only in India, but in markets across the world. And already we've seen several large banks downgrading their indices when it comes to the Adani Group, or making announcements that Adani bonds will no longer be used as collateral for loans and that sort of thing. And I believe all of these things will add up, and I do hope that Mr. Adani and Mr. Modi are able to see common sense and to decide not to proceed with many of these coal projects, which would have such dire consequences for the local people of India in the areas concerned, but also for the Earth's climate.
Yes, now I'll come to my last question, Jeff. So there are allegations by Adani Group and one section in India that you are after the group because you want to harm the brand. What do you have to say to that?
Our concern is with the environment. Our concern is with social justice. Our concern is with the Earth's atmosphere. Our concern with the Adani Group is its colossal exploitation of coal and other operations which are displacing and in other ways causing hardships for local people, including Adivasi people and traditional ways of life in India, as indeed we've expressed these concerns in Australia about the impacts of the Carmichael mine. And unfortunately, in India, a lot of the critical journalists who would be holding the Adani Group to account and providing the necessary scrutiny have been are the subject of lawsuits that have been taken by the Adani Group, and or the subject of gag orders applied by Mr. Adani's favourite courts there in Gujarat, or have been the subject of arrest warrants. So this kind of persecution, combined with the Adani Group acquiring one of the last independent TV news stations in India, NDTV, has resulted in a loss of the ability of concerned people in India to stand up to this group. And so if this Adani Watch project here in Australia can provide some assistance, then we're only too pleased to do so.
Thank you very much for talking to us, Jeff.
My pleasure, up to you. Thank you.